All right, good morning, everyone. Let's start our Tuesday's class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गम्या ओम सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहि तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहि ओम शांति 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 ओम. So Narad Bhakti Sutra. Narad ji is giving us the definition of bhakti according to Ved Vyas ji in verse number 16. He said, in the worship of the Lord with deep love and firm attachment is declared by the son of Prashar, Shri Ved Vyas. Okay? Firm attachment, anurag. See, anu means a very smallest portion. Rag is the attachment. So like every minute, every second, or even smaller than a second, in every part of our mind, just attachment to God. Okay? So that kind of a puja. Okay, doing a puja, attachment to God. Okay. Then in verse number 17, he said, according to Maharishi Garg, a great attachment to listening to the stories of Lord's glories is bhakti. So hearing the katha. Katha adishu iti gargaha. Then verse number 18, according to sage Shandilya, Atamrati avirodhen iti Shandalya. Atamrati means Atamrati avirodhen, without hindrance to the constant reveling in the bliss of the self. So Atamrati means bliss of the self, bliss of the Atma, the inner nature. Avirodh, without hindrance. So Virod means hindrance, avirodh means without hindrance to the constant reveling in the bliss of the self. Iti means thus, Shandilya, sage Shandilya. So the devotion for God, which is not opposed to attachment to the inner self, is a true devotion. True devotion. So this is according to another famous exponent of Bhakti. I'm sure you have all heard about Rishi Shandilya's name. He talks about the heart completely immersed in the love of God. Surrender to the God. Okay, so do that kind of a puja, that kind of a listening, which is not contrary to the experience of a steady awareness of the bliss and the peace of the self within, which does not take you away from the Atamrati. So steady contemplation upon God or any such divine concept, if it helps us in recognizing in them the nature of the Atma, the inner self. He says, then all such actions are bhakti. All such actions. So in short, according to sage Shandilya, love consists in our mental thoughts, vrittis, that are not a hindrance to the steady flow of our personality towards the divine spark. Divine spark where awareness is towards ourself, the real self. So that means if the worship emphasized by Vyasji earlier distracts us or takes us from the steady meditation upon the self, don't do it then. So if the Karam Kand, the rituals take you away from this connection with the Atma, Paramatma, that is not for you. Or if the chanting or singing or listening to the stories of the Lord takes a devotee's attention away from his steady stream or contemplation and pushes him into the realm of world, stop it. So whatever keeps you connected with the Lord. So all our dedicated actions, they should generate more and more love for God. There should be a flow of the mind towards the Lord of love. And any action is effective then. That's what Shandilya Rishi is saying. Love alone is the path. And by love alone, we can reach love. We learned that from Adi Shankaracharyaji's Vivek Chudamani. Most of you are studying that on Saturdays with me. Verse number 31. Shankaracharya is saying, among the instruments and conditions necessary for liberation, Bhakti alone is supreme. A constant attempt to live up to one's own real nature is called a single-pointed devotion. Moksha karan samagrayam bhakti rev griyasi. Griyasi means the greatest. Svarup roop anusandhanam bhakti ati abhidhiyate. Of all the implements that can be employed for the liberation of one's personality, devotion alone is the most effective. So this is also the opinion of Rishi Shandilya. So this bhakti rasa, the nectar of devotion, should keep on growing, whether through puja or whether through listening. Rasa, this nectar should not be about the external things. Sometimes we forget. In puja also, we just get distracted in the externals. We go to Tirath Sthan and we get distracted. What we're going to buy from there? If you are going to a Tirath Sthan, a holy place, that should connect us, that should increase our bhakti for God. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. Or when we go see a temple also, if we are only looking at the architect of the building, the old temples, and the love for God is not increasing, that's a waste of time. If all we are looking at it, how much gold is over there? My own Guruji used to say that the flowers in the temple should not be more beautiful than the God's picture. If you start looking at the flowers and you forget the God and there's no connection with the God, that's a hindrance. So external attachment or attachment to the external should help us to fix our mind on the divine. Even in singing also, if we just stay connected with the swar, tal and lay, we have lost the real purpose of singing too. There's a real story I heard some times ago. There is a temple of Bihari Ji, they call it. And over there they have the jhula of Lord Krishna, which is made out of pure gold. But they take out the jhula because it's so expensive. So all gold and maybe the gems on it too. They take it out only once a year. Every time they take out that jhula, there are miles and miles of lines waiting to enter into the temple. So what are they waiting for? To see the external, the expensive jhula. So Rishi Shandalya is saying, grow or increase the love for God, not the love for externals. Don't run after the crowds like that. So for a bhakti, for a bhagat, it's internal attachment to God alone, connection with God alone. Now, after talking about the definition by Vyasji, definition by Maharishi Garg, definition by Rishi Shandalya, now Naradji is giving us a definition of bhakti. He says, Naradastuhu tadarpitaha akhil charataha tad vismaran param vyakulta iti. The key word in this verse is param vyakulta. Naradastu, to Dev Rishi Narad, indeed. Astu means indeed. Tadarpitaha akhil charataha, dedication of all actions at the altar of the Lord. You're dedicating everything. Tadarpitaha, tad arpit. Akhil charta. Akhil means all of it, all actions. Tad vismarnehe. At all occasions of forgetfulness of the Lord. That means any time where you forget Lord. Param vyakulta. Excruciating pain, the pang. How come I forgot God? Param vyakulta. The way we get param vyakul when we don't see our loved ones. Over here, param vyakulta, that kind of excruciating pain when you forget Lord. How could I? Iti means thus. That means in true devotion. So Narad is saying that according to Dev Rishi Narad, according to him, total dedication of all actions at the altar of the Lord. All actions. So that doesn't mean we are not supposed to do the actions, but dedicate all your actions to Lord. And at all moments of forgetfulness of the Lord, excruciating pangs is a supreme love divine. So he's proposing a definition of devotion for us. So this definition is not contrary to the definitions given earlier. Different stages, but same meaning. So to worship the Lord, to adore him with devotional chants, to nurture our love for God through constant contemplation upon his presence within the heart. So that's what we learned earlier. So Dev Rishi's Narad is not questioning those. He's not smashing those definitions. But he's only making an attempt to integrate all those views in order to take us towards the deeper path, deeper depth of ourselves, where we don't come out. Anytime we come out of that connection, we feel a pang in our heart. See, Param Vyakulta, it's almost like another Hindi name for that is Chatpatahat, like a fish out of the water, that kind of a feeling when you forget God. So longing, when the longing is so intense, this is the time a Shrota becomes the Pivasu. So Shrota likes to hear God's stories. But you want to really immerse into this totally. Not just through the ears, but your total personality. That's a Pipasu. So through sadhana, sincere sadhana, this intense longing we all feel. See, it's almost like when a person we love, a minute seems like an hour or sometimes a year. The other person will say it was only, I was late only by 15 minutes, but those 15 minutes seem like a long time because of that intense longing. So when we have that for God, you will get the grace. So it's not the sadhana, but the longing that gets you the grace. This kind of a longing. So it's not only during the puja. Narad ji is saying no matter what you are doing, to surrender all activities, secular as well as sacred. Because all activities, we have other duties. So even while doing the other duties also, stay connected with God. Remember Him with love at all times and feel extremely desperate. That's another word I would like to use so that you can understand this vyakulta. This extremely desperation, when we detect that even a few moments had passed and I didn't remember my Lord, I got distracted away. That is a supreme devotion, he says. Okay. In Gita also, 9th chapter, verse number 27, Lord Krishna is telling Arjun how to increase this love with God. Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat juhoshi, dadasi yat. Yat tapasyasi kauntya, tat kurushva mad arpanam. Same thing he's saying. He says, oh Arjun, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give as an offering, as oblation to the sacred fire, whatever charity you give, whatever austerity you perform, make sure that it's all done as an offering to me. Mad arpanam. So it's evidently clear here that the definition of Naradji, he is embracing all the main factors that have been indicated by different sages when they are making an attempt to define this bhakti. He says, this is what we need to experience. When we sleep also, we should not sleep that, hey, I had a good sleep. While sleeping, before sleeping, when we got up also, did we remember God? Were we doing a pranam to God at that time? Did we feel that in our heart? When we are eating, do we offer it to God first? Or do we just eat it for our own maza? Offer it to God. When we give charity also, is this charity for our name and fame? Or even tax deduction? Or is it a charity? It's a God's. I'm giving it back to God. Nothing is mine. If that kind of a emotion is in our heart, God and only God, then of course we will be vyakul when we forget God. Vivekananda also said the same thing. He said, do everything for the pleasure of God. Connect with God with every activity. That's why the famous saying of his, no work is secular, every work is devotional and worship. So these great rishis, they are not asking us to give up our duties or give up our professions. They are all saying is change the consciousness or the attitude with which you perform your action. Keep working according to your gunas, or offer the reward to God. Serve God with the fruits. Change your mentality. Always remember, I'm just a caretaker. He is the owner. And how do we know that we are really doing this or not? According to Vivekananda's saying or Lord Krishna's message, test yourself from time to time. When the result is coming, when the fruit comes, and if it doesn't come what you wanted, do you get disturbed? Because fruit is not for you anyway. If you get disturbed, that means that you were not connected with God. You did not do the action for God. Bhakti is an amazing thing. Amazing. It is so supreme. You can do this kind of a bhakti anywhere, anytime, every moment. That's why he said, Sarveshu Kaleshu Sumar. Okay. Now let's look at verse number 20. Asti evam evam. Asti means there is. Evam means thus. So how is it translated? Let it be exactly as described above. This is a literary style of the Sutras. When a philosophy is enunciated, they just point it out like this to the acceptability of what has been discussed. So they say this is what it is. Final conclusion is arrived. It's like almost like a direct endorsement. So Narad is just endorsing it all. It's also called a unvarnished statement, declaring, accepting the ideas so far discussed. So devotion is love for the divine. And what had been said alone can be the true nature of the deepest devotion to the Lord. So it's not just merely the opinion of Naradji, but it is the very essence of that have been said about devotion. So words of the great teachers of devotion, they really drive us deeper into the very springs of God love. So aim over here is to develop the longing. So whether we study the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita repeatedly, this is the cardinal essence of devotion. Okay. So God, what does God sees? God sees the love. That's where that famous verse, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. No matter what you offer, make sure you do it with love. I accept it if it's filled with the love. So he's not concerned with anything else. Okay. One time, one disciple asked Guruji, And he said, can I attain God while running? Guruji said, yes. Think that God is running with you. Then he asked, can I attain God while standing? Guruji said, sure, imagine that God is standing with you. Little later he said, how about sitting? Guruji said, sure, sit down, think you are sitting in God's lap. So to God, it's not the standing, sitting, sleeping, direction, time. It is the love which really counts. So love in the heart is more important. So we got to see when we do our puja, what is in our heart? What are we longing for? Are we longing for another promotion or another whatever worldly thing? Or are we longing for God? That's what we got to increase. So devotion is that love in the heart where God and only God. Because people like to do different things. Some people clean the temples. Some people write. Some people speak. But the most important thing is the feeling of God in the heart. You could be doing the dishes in the temple. You could be cooking. You could be cleaning the parking lot. And you have a God in your heart. But a person could be singing the bhajans, but not God in the mind. Only how good of a singer I am. There's no connection with God. So connection is through love in the heart, feeling of God in the heart. One person made a big statue of Hanumanji in the bazaar. Another person put a roof on the top of it to protect that Hanumanji from rain. Then the third person came. He took down the roof so that Hanumanji's glory can be shining and spreading everywhere. In God's eyes, they are all equal. They're all equal. Because in their heart, it was a love for God. The person who put the statue also, a person who put the roof also, person who took down the roof also. No difference. The same way a learned person will say, Pandit will say, Vishnave Namaha. But a person who doesn't know Sanskrit will say Vishnavaya Nama because he will say there is a Ramaya Nama, Krishnaya Nama, Shivaya Nama, and Vishnavaya Nama. A Pandit will say you are wrong. But God doesn't say it's wrong. God sees the love, not the language. Because to a Pandit, each syllable is important. But for a Bhagat, for a devotee, whether you say Ram Ram or Mara Mara, doesn't matter as long as you're connected with God. So this is what this Asti Evam Evam really means. That God is concerned only with love. That's why Narad is saying, all the methods are correct. All the methods, so just make sure there's a connection though. The connecting factor is love. Then he is giving us an example. The most famous examples. Number 21, he says, Yatha Vraj Gopika Naam. Yatha means just as. So this is the example. Vraj Gopika Naam, of the gopis of Vraj, Vrindavan. Gopis were the milkmaids. We are all familiar. We grew up with these stories. Gopis. We like to dress up like gopis. We want to do the ras like gopis. But do we have a love for God like gopis? So Narad is saying the love like gopis have in their heart. True devotion they had upon the infinite, unquestioning, heartful love. That's what gopis had. Nobody can measure their voiceless love. They surrendered their bodies, minds, and intellects. They did not care for anything else, not even knowledge. You have heard many stories about Uddhavji when he goes there to give them the gyan. They are not concerned about that. They have surrendered to God everything. The Christian is their joy, their beloved. They left their homes, broke all the ties of worldly relationships only to be in his sight. Dancing with him, smiling with him, because that was how they loved him. They wanted to be with him day and night. They sure lived in their homes, performed their duties, but their minds were constantly fixed in the highest meditation upon the Krishna. Gopis saw, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched that divine butter. That in butter also they said they saw God, because they saw that their Krishna is the thief of that butter. So when they looked at the butter also, all they saw was Krishna. Everywhere, at all times. By any chance, if they happened to forget Krishna, they suffered deep anguish in their hearts. So if we have that kind of a love, then we are very fortunate. But if we don't have, by remembering gopis, try to increase the intensity of your love. So that's why this Dev Rishi Narad is giving the example of gopis, perfect example, and he's recommending this to us also, that we need to aspire for this kind of a love. So completely, fully, we need to do that. So this is like an ideal for a bhagat, the highest example of bhakti, the gopis themselves. In fact, there is a Adi Purana. Lord Krishna himself in Adi Purana talks about gopis' love. He gives the biggest salute to the Gopi Prem in Skand Purana also. Because there are amazing stories in these Puranas. न तथा में प्रियतमः ब्रह्मा रुद्र व पार्थव न च लक्ष्मी न च आत्मा च यथा गोपी जनोहम. So he is putting the love of gopis, he says they are so dear to me. So he is praising the gopis above the Brahma, above the Rudra, above the Lakshmi, and above the Atma. He says gopis are so dear to me. There is a story about in the Bhagavad Puran. That these thousands of queens, Lord Krishna's queens, they did not, they heard about some of the stories of Krishna's childhood, but they wanted to hear more. One day, they asked Mother Rohini, Balram's mother. He lived there in that palace too. Because Mother Rohini, she saw the childhood. She enjoyed the childhood of Krishna. So they said, can you tell us those stories? So Mother Rohini said, sure, in the morning, when Balram and Krishna, they are out for their duties. They are not in the palace. They are in the place, the court, where they go as a king. So then I'll tell you the stories. So Balram and Krishna were gone, and Mother Rohini, she is sitting over there with all these queens. And they didn't want Krishna and Balram to come there. So they put Subhadra outside the door as a gatekeeper. But make sure that Krishna doesn't come, because I'm going to be telling you all his childhood stories. So Subhadra is sitting over there. Stories are going on. Everybody is just totally immersed in love. Here Balram and Krishna come. They could hear what's going on. And Subhadra is totally in samadhi. And Ved Vyasji says, Krishna and Balram came and they go into samadhi too. Listening about this love play between the gopis and Kana. That is bhakti. God himself listening to his stories and the tears flowing down, and they just go into deep samadhi with Mahabhav. So do we get this kind of a love for God? When was the last time we lost the consciousness of our body? While we are talking to God, or while we are listening to God, or while we are cleaning the God's temple, or while we are going to visit a temple, any place, got to recall that. It should happen to us. That is love according to Naradji. Mahabhav. Mahabhav. Number 22. Tatraha api na mahatamye vi samritye apavadaha. Tatra means there. There means in this condition of total love. Api means even. Na means not. Mahatamye is the glory of Lord. Mahatamye. Vi samritye apavadaha. The bane of forgetting. Okay. So even there, in this condition of total love, there is no bane of forgetting the glory of the Lord. Because normally there is a widespread feeling among the students of Bhagavad that these gopis, they were sheer sentimental lovers of Lord Krishna with no real understanding of God. They just loved him, that's all. So that's like there are so many lovers of God, that's all. They didn't have the gyan, as they say. But they say that over there also, there were categories of gopis. Some were attracted to Krishna because of his beauty. Divine beauty, but they were attracted. And some forgot also that he is God because they are so much immersed in the love. But some did not. because there are levels. But over here, Narad is telling us that remain mindful, not forget the glory of God. Because as the love increases, the knowledge also increases. If you forget what God is, see, like in knowledge merges with the help of the knowledge and with the help of love, the total merger comes. So they were all, gopis were jnanis. They were all spiritual saints actually. Some of them were devatas also. So that's why Lord Krishna mentions 4 varieties of bhagats, because there are degrees. He talks about the artharthi, the jigyasu, the arth, and the jnanis. So jnani is the one who has constant remembrance of the Lord also. Love also, the knowledge also. So we should never forget that. So this selfless love should increase or manifest to the highest extent. So that means that they do not have even a trace of desire for their own happiness. Goal is only the Lord's happiness. So there is a triple negative used in this sutra so that we can understand it better. So gopis forget that he is God because they are so much immersed in their love. Just like Shabri also. Shabri in the intense loving state gave half-eaten bear or the berries to Shri Ram. Mahatamne Vismriti. Okay, so there's always a chance we might forget, but sometimes forgetting the external and remembering the God, that's what we are trying to do through this love divine. Okay, so see, it's like a Yoga Maya makes us forget also. Yoga Maya. And the continuation of this, he goes into the next 2 verses, then it will be more clear, and then we'll talk about it next time. But right now, let's stop it here. But remember that 22, 23, and 24, once you have gone through all of this, you will see the message which is with Narad is trying to give us through these verses is more clear. Okay, so we'll stop it here. Anybody has any question, comment?
Yes, Manju Malhotra.
Yes, Manju.
You have to unmute.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to unmute, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
no.
know.
So one question, Hershey, namaste.
Namaste.
So as you said, the devotee can even forget, like in case of Valmiki ji, mara mara mara. I mean, doesn't.
Yeah.
So does that really mean they doesn't even identify? Some people are totally ignorant, or because of wherever they were born and the previous whatever, so they don't even think of believing in God or somebody above them, but their heart is just full of love for everyone. So basically, doesn't know the word God, nothing like that, but the heart is very pure and clean and love for the whole creation.
Yeah.
So is that bhakti too or not? It's not towards the God. They don't have
Yeah,
that concept, but
if their heart is clean, they are compassionate. Yeah, they are not doing any rituals.
Yeah.
So what happens is bhakti helps us to let go of our ego. Otherwise, we can say, yeah, I am doing good. I love everybody. I'm not hurting anybody. So that aham bhav is there. So bhakti helps to dissolve that ego. Okay, because you are dissolving yourself into the higher self. Okay, so that's why bhakti is needed. Loving
This,
everybody, not hurting anybody, sure, those are good qualities. Definitely, they are good qualities. They should be there in a bhagat.
right, or even a karam yogi, whatever.
Yeah, in a karam yogi also. So
Whatever.
it
Right.
helps to remember the higher power
Yeah.
and surrender to that power.
Right.
Otherwise, whom you are surrendering to? I'm not saying that everybody should say the name of God or a particular name of God or particular form of God, but this higher power we got to surrender to if we want to merge. That's needed.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So, so as I said, your love for that higher is needed. You want to call it a bhagat or a bhakti or devotion, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But we need to surrender. Otherwise, ego just takes the hold of it, to anybody actually. It just somehow it has that kind of a power, this ego.
Hershey,
Okay.
just going on to more what
Thank you.
you're saying. For a person like who doesn't have any concept of God, but yet his nature is all giving and all compassionate and all non-egoistic and all that. Does that fall under
Manju is saying, that's what Manju is saying, and I'm saying that that is not enough.
not enough? Okay.
You can slip,
The acknowledgement of God has to be there.
yes, otherwise you will slip.
Okay.
This ego, you can say that I don't have an ego. To me, I think ego can catch you any time. I don't have that.
That means
I don't have the ego that I.
yes.
Okay, so to me, I think having a this bhakti, love for God, presence of God, to me, I think it's needed. I mean, that's again my opinion.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Nope.
No questions, huh? So who is singing today? Tuesday. Do we have anybody?
Rita ji, do you want to sing today?
Is Rita there? Rita Chawla is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Rita ji, do you want to?
Yeah, normally she sings Wednesdays. So maybe that's why she's not here.
Either of them.
So maybe then Manny, are you there? I think in the beginning of the class, we should have somebody so that we don't, otherwise I could have gone into a couple of more verses here. So, yeah, Neetu has a question. Yes, Neetu.
Neetu, yeah.
You can unmute yourself, Neetu.
Okay. Hershey, it was so nice hearing all about love for God. However, there's always a question in my heart: how does somebody get that intense love like gopis and Sudama, Radha? I mean, there is examples are endless, but to have that, I mean, it's something. It's always the question: is like, how did some get that? We talk about so much love in this modern world, but we have so much vacuum of love, and that's where the void is not even letting us see that, have the love for God. I mean, it's so beautiful when you talk about it, because I know you feel it and that's why you can express in your emotion. But the devotion part, that is like, it's like always is by blocked by this ego in us. And that's my obstacle. That's what I would say.
Yeah, to me, I think a couple of things we need to do. Just have a regular practice of devotional part in your life. Like keep the bhajans on. These days, it's so easy for us to just on the YouTube. bhajans on.
Mhm.
Whenever you need to watch something, also make sure you are watching something which is which shows the power of love.
Okay.
Okay, there are so many episodes are available these days. We are so lucky to
Yeah.
have that on YouTube, on the TV, Netflix. I mean, there's countless. So, okay. And then your own prayers morning and evening. And make sure not to keep the company of those kind of a people who don't believe in God.
Hmm.
Sure, sometimes they could be our relatives, but
Mhm.
still we should just not have arguments, no discussions. Because the doubts, once we have a doubt in our mind, it will keep on growing. It's like a weed.
Mhm.
Want to grow only the seeds of love for God in our.
Mhm.
Okay, keep the company of devotees.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why we have this group these days. Every day we talk about God.
Mhm.
That helps us,
Mhm.
and rest of the time we should contemplate and decrease the love for the people.
Mhm.
He's going to talk about it in the next few verses. We'll see that
Okay.
the worldly love and their godly love.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and I will elaborate on that a little bit more. Okay,
And
worldly love, godly love, there's a big difference, just like you were saying, that vacuum we feel otherwise. So the godly love should grow.
Mhm.
Worldly, we do only duties.
Okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
so it takes time, sure, but even to have this kind of a question, how do I grow it? That means
Yeah.
you are crying for it, and which is good. These are good tears. These are good cries. That is out of love too, and
Yeah.
that's how love grows. When we look at somebody else's love, it's just very addictive actually.
Yeah.
Somebody else, just like you said, these stories of gopis or Sudama or Shabri, yeah, from childhood we've been listening to these
Mhm.
stories and we want to emulate them.
Yeah.
That's why we sing bhajans about them.
Yeah.
That's why we watch those episodes also, right? Whether they are giving us a Krishna story or whether we watch Ramayana, it's just like those stories come again and again and again.
Yeah.
And that's very important for us,
Yeah.
for Bhagats.
Yeah.
So, and remember these sayings from Bhagavad Gita also. Lord Krishna says, whatever you do it for me. Before eating, do we remember God? Do we offer it to God? Before sleeping, what do we do? Do we remember God last thing at night? First thing in the morning, do we look at our hands? Karagre vaste Lakshmi. Do we say that?
But you saw all these things as you grew up as in that family from childhood. So you had that some a role model, a father figure, or a guru, both in uh, um, one person. And so now we are when we I don't know whatever reason I feel these emotions. I don't know how it's manifested in me. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, how.
It's okay. It's okay. Remember when your Guruji used to come to your house?
Yeah,
I'm sure he had so much love for God.
he was love. That's all it
He
was.
was love. So remember him.
Okay.
Remember him and consider yourself very fortunate that your Guru came,
Yeah.
lived in your house.
Yeah.
Very fortunate. So
Yeah.
remember those. Remember his words. Remember the blessings which you have.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, so we all can, with those positive feelings, we can grow our love.
Okay.
And this is study, sure, these studies help us. To me,
Sure.
I think knowledge also, love also, our duties also, our duties done properly, that God is blessing us. Okay?
But I constantly get dragged by the ego. I mean, I know I'm okay, but I'm aware that it's like the power of ego is always pulling
Ego,
me.
ego is very powerful. You are not the only one, Neetu. That's why they say ego is so subtle. And the subtlest thing is the most powerful, very pervasive.
Yeah.
Ego is no. Ego has captured even the greatest people. Even Naraji talks about it in
I
his lifetime also. The ego.
I see.
Arjun,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there have been great personalities, and
Yeah.
then God helped them.
Okay. Okay. That feels good.
Okay, Satyabhama, Lord Krishna's wife, she thought that she's so beautiful. Ego.
Oh wow.
God's
But
wife.
does he play, does God does that to test us? Is that
No, no, no. God doesn't test us. God helped her to get out of that.
I see.
Okay.
I see. Okay.
So it's we should not. We should just only pray to God. Then ego will definitely subside.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So we
Okay.
should not be afraid of ego. Ego is part of Prakriti.
Okay.
God is see ego. Ego is God's Maya.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
go to God. Ego will
Okay. Okay.
sit back.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
So we have
good.
to pray to God that please take hold of this ego, so that this ego doesn't take hold of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So it's
Yeah.
okay. Don't get disheartened. It's okay. These are good
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
questions and yeah. Okay. So I think many. You want to sing today?